Today we talk about the game Cryo. Okay, first the bad news. Our starship crashed on a frozen, desolate planet, so that can't be good. On the somewhat plus side of things, there we have drones that are going to do a lot of work for us while we are slumbering inside the cryogenic chambers. Hello, this is you, this is me, this is one of the several sleepers that we have. So this is a worker placement game, a competitive game for 2 to 4 players, in which your workers are represented by drones that you will send from your board, from your personal board, to the map to activate actions on the map, and then you send them back. When you send them back, they also activate actions on your personal board. So it almost feels like a double worker placement game, because in most worker placement games, after you place your workers, you bring them back. Placing the workers on the board is the main thing, and bringing them back is, let's say, a blank action. Not here. They work when they go there, and they work when they come back. So that's an interesting idea. So here's the board. We have an area here at the bottom that represents underground caverns that we will try to colonize. You place these tiles in these locations at the beginning of the game. They're flipped face up when they are discovered by using the scout action. This is where the drones land, and the further you go down the tunnel system to colonize caverns, the more energy you need to spend, as showed by these icons. We need to spend resources here to be able to colonize that cavern, and this is the amount of victory points that you score if you have a majority in this cavern, and there is another number there that indicates if you have you're second in the majority race. Bringing your people to these caverns is a main source of points, but there are also many other ways of scoring victory points, and ultimately the game is based on victory points. End of the game, play with the most points wins. This other area here on the map is divided into 4 more sections. This is where the drones go, and when a drone enters or lands in one of these spaces here, it can activate any of the adjacent actions, and the icons represent different things that the drone can do. These spaces represent tiles that you can collect. You can collect for the resource, say this one will give me 1 technology, or you can collect the tile itself to add it to your board. Because the board, again, that the drones land from also has actions that are performed when the drones are recalled. And if you take the actual tile, you can place it in one of the slots on your personal board. If it's placed here, it simply means that you collect that. So if a drone, when recalled, lands there, it will give me 1 technology. And I simply record here the fact that I collected that technology. These other slots up here indicate cost, which means actually if I, say, place this one here, that tile there, it means that when I recall a drone and I place it there, I can spend I spend an energy, this is the energy, an energy to receive a nanobots, which is the wild resource. The other resources are crystals and organic, and again we have technology, nanobots or nanites, and then energy. These are the resources that we have here. So this is a really new idea here. If I place, say, a tile there, then by recalling a drone there, I can spend these 2 to draw or play a card, and so on and so forth. So it really is a worker placement here, because just like in other worker placements, by placing one of your workers in a location, you're blocking it. That means I cannot take the same action twice, and I can only take some of the actions. So you still have to prioritize, you still have to take into account the same considerations when you are recalling drones on your board as when you are placing them on the main board. So that's a really cool idea. Again, we talked about the resources and stuff. So when it is your turn, you're gonna activate one of your drones if you have any on the board. again, place them in a location on the main board and activate one of the actions here, which again can be collect stuff, pay technology to play or draw a card here. This action here allows you to place one of your people in the cryo chambers in one of these spaces here, which can be useful. They're savaging, they're collecting stuff for you, so you'll get to collect more stuff later. We'll talk about that in a little while. This action allows you to recall these people. You need actions such as this one. This one actually, this action here allows you to pick up one of these guys. This action here, it looks, the icons are not always all that readable. And at a distance, they look very, very similar. But this one allows you to scout, which means you spend these resources here, one of your people, nanobots, and energy to actually move one of your people to an unexplored cave tile, just like so. That's what it does. So actions to wake up your people, action and put them on either there, that's what the action allows you to do, or in this storage area here on your personal board. As you can see, there are 3 slots there. We talked about cards. You use actions to collect cards. The cards have multiple functions. You can play a card as an upgrade, in which case you tuck it under your board so that only the upgrade section is visible and you simply gain the effect described there. Or you can take the card and put it in a personal face-down pile. If you do so, you're storing it for the end of the game, at which point you will reveal it. You will only look at this section here, and that will give you ways to score extra points at the end of the game. You can also play a card as a ship that you're going to use to launch people into the caverns, in which case you tuck the card like so. And this also gives you some extra slots where you can store the people that you have woken up, in addition to storage places that you have there. When you have this situation, then you can take the action of, again, launching a drone there, and then simply paying all the energy of the tunnels that you're traveling and paying the cost of the place where you're landing. Then you can place your people there. So as you can see, a lot of variety from your personal board that changes based on the tasks that you place there because I place a task. But then again, when I recall my drones, I will still activate different things. So let's talk about that. It's like in most worker placement games, so the main idea is you take workers from your supply, which again are drones here, and you place them onto locations on the board, trigger the corresponding actions. So far, so good. However, at some point you will have to recall your drones, and that's when you take the action of, again, recalling the drones. There are several steps here. When you take the recall action, first you also recover salvage, which means you collect resources based on the workers that you place there. If this is my situation, for example, just by declaring the action of recalling, that's when I cash in. I get 1 crystal and 2 organic resources, just like that. So collecting from that area is the first thing that happens when you take the recall action. Second, you resolve an incident. That's an interesting idea. I don't know that I like the word, because incident may be very good. You just collect some resources here. Sometimes not so much. Each area of the board has a small space where you place one of these tiles here, as you can see. And some have resources. When you recall your drones, you basically resolving an incident means that you collect one of these tiles. If I choose to collect this one, then I simply gain a nanobot, and another tile replaces it from a from a supply. However, some of these tiles are not good. If I take this one, this is Sabotage, and it destroys all of the cryo chambers, all of the people that are in that space. Right now, I set up the game only with red, but of course, if we were playing multiple players, all these spaces that would be safe. Playing with yellow and red, then there's yellow and red here, yellow and red, and so on and so forth. Which means I may not want to destroy a chamber that has a person from everybody, from every team, including mine. But suppose that I start to waking up my people, sending them to do stuff. Now they're only enemy pieces here. Then when it's time to take one of these tiles, I may choose to take the tile that destroys enemies' workers. Not really workers, because they don't do much. Enemies, cryo chambers, enemies, explorers, space people, whatever the term that you prefer may be. So, for a worker placement, there is that take that element. But let's not get sidetracked. The recall action does have a little bit of procedure. So, back to us. When you take the recall action because all of your drones are out, or you choose to take it early on, collect resources from there. Collect a tile which is called, it was an incident tile, resolving an incident, which may give you stuff or may destroy stuff. Finally, you return the drones to your board, and depending on where you decide to have them land, then you may acquire different things. You may gain different advantages, which again also is based on how you set up this board here. The incident tiles that are collected every time somebody recalls. These incident tiles also are the timer. There is a larger one that is placed in that area there. When that one is placed on the board and finally selected, that is the end of the game. And at the point you score points from various sources, main ones being majority that you have here, the number of chambers, of colonists that you were able to send on there, secret objectives that you get to score here from the cards, collect points from all possible sources, and at the end, the player with the most points wins the game. I like Cryo. I like the second generation feel that it has to it, meaning second generation worker placement, with the idea that we see in recent game design that the gaps are filled. Everything becomes imbued with decisions, with agency. Even the act of returning your workers from the board to your pool now is becoming its own mini game, its own parallel game that you get to play pretty often because you have 3 drones. So even if you send all of your drones out, basically 1 out of 4 turns will be the recall, in which you will play the mini game of placing your worker drones on your mini board, which in the meanwhile you have changed, you have altered, you have customized, so to speak. And so that's very interesting. That, to me, that's fun. Of course, that in a certain sense narrows the audience, because to say, hey, it's like a worker placement in which you also place workers when you return components to the pool, that to us that have played this kind of game before is just adding another step. It's part of a continuum. Of course, for somebody who doesn't come from hobby games, who is not familiar with these conventions, the learning curve can be pretty steep. And still here you have a lot of actions, a lot of different elements to learn. The game overall makes sense, but again, the learning curve, I guess, can be a little bit threatening. It's a mid-weight game that may feel a little heavier because of all the decisions that come into it. Come to think of it, I think a danger here may be analysis paralysis. Now, I played the game only with 2 players. And also played it one solitaire because I wanted to see how the game worked that way. With 2 players, they were both me, playing at the best of my possibilities with each fictional player. But playing against another human opponent, it worked well that way. But there were already times in which I would have wanted to take my sweet time to consider all the options, all the possibilities, because resources are scarce, and so you really need to chain your effects and chain your actions well. Misplacing a drone, wasting an action can be not catastrophic, but pretty heavy thing to deal with in the long run. And so you really want to take your time to make sure that this action will give me that resource that I need for that action, which powers up that effect, blah, 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 blah. So, and as everybody wants to do that, of course, I think with more than 2 players, the game may become a little bit annoying, because really, there really isn't anything that you're going to do during other players' turns. So with 4 players, you play 25% of the game. And you can really, and you cannot use a lot you can use some of your time while you're waiting for your turn thinking about your strategy. But then somebody places their drone exactly where you wanted to place it. So now your supremely sophisticated strategy that relies on you getting that one action, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then you do that, it's completely gone, and you had to rethink it entirely. So you may use the time between your turns to think about your strategies, but then there will be times in which you have to rethink it right away, and that takes time. And again, I found that with 2 players, when my opponent was placing the drone just where I needed to place it, and I had to rethink my strategy, sometimes I was already feeling a little bit guilty about taking too much time. But again, with 2 players, not too much of a problem. I would not go above 2 players. It seems to me that this game actually would easily support a solitaire variant, a true solitaire, in which you have an AI that simply places drones and messes up resources, picks up stuff from the board, and scores points automatically to simulate the agency of the other players. I don't know if that has been done, but I think it would work very well that way. Other than this, I think it's a solid game. It has another strange thing, which is it has a little bit of a confrontational element with the sabotage action of actually destroying the people of the other players. But that's not overpowerful, because by taking that sabotage action, maybe I'm removing some of your people, but I am limiting myself in other ways because I'm not collecting some resources, which again can work very well in some chains. I like the fact that there are multiple paths to victory, which may not be obvious when you read the rulebook. The rulebook makes a point that you need to go and civilize those caverns because that's where most of the victory points are. But it happened to me that I was able to win without getting a lot of majorities there, but rather by collecting points, say with completing those missions or fulfilling those requirements in those cards. There can be a lot of points that can be scored there. So actually you can have a balanced strategy, invest a lot on those, invest a lot on the colonization of caverns. So I like the flexibility that you have there. These are long-term strategies, so you do have to commit, which again, that means you need to think very well about every step along the way, because if you mess up something along that way, then you don't really have time to recover from that. So it's definitely a fairly involved worker placement with some twists that I had not seen before. There is a confrontational element which is unusual to me in this kind of game, but is not too bad. The area majority, always fun because you feel good until you realize that people can take it from you. And also something that I like in games usually is how you can manipulate the end of the game, because you don't have to pick up the token that will make the game end, although you probably want to if you think you're ahead. But then there are those cards that people have kept aside that are secret, and so maybe a gamble to end the game now because you don't know how many people have there. So a lot of interesting interactions here with a game that looks familiar in a way, worker placement, but has some really interesting twists that keep it fresh and keep it nice. So overall, I definitely enjoyed Cryo.